Welcome to the Golden Com podcast. I have special guests with me, John David Booty.
Hey, Jason. Glad to be here, man.
JD Booty.
Yep.
Just curious, JD or John David? What do you prefer?
I'm JD probably.
JD?
Yeah.
All right, JD, thanks for coming to the show.
Glad to be here.
For our listeners, many will have recognized the name. I certainly recognize the name because I'm a huge Trojan fan. I went to SC, watched you played football there, watched you bring 2 Rose Bowl victories, watched you take an MVP of the Rose Bowl. And I want to get a little bit into football, but ideally, today's podcast will talk about things that you can't read on your own on Wikipedia or sports stats, right? Because you've got an amazing story that I want to get into today. But of course, we can't tell the story without how you grew up.
Yep.
Can you take me back to Shreveport, Louisiana?
Oh, Shreveport. It was a great place to grow up. Not a lot to do and not much happening, but as a kid, it was great. Had 2 older brothers, 1 younger. My dad was a pastor and a coach. Grew up on 3 acres of land, so we had all the room we needed to run around and play and have a great time, and had 4 or 5 buddies on the street playing ball every day. That's how we grew up. It was hot at times, but again, when you don't know any different, it was fine.
Okay, so there's 4 brothers in this family.
Correct.
And then there's a dad and a mom.
Yep.
And this family likes football.
We do.
And
we
baseball.
Like football. Yes, and baseball.
And baseball. And probably anything else with a ball and a score.
That's correct.
Okay. So a little bit about the football team and your career at your high school, which was a Christian high school.
Christian high school, small school, 400 or 500 K through 12th. And it was always that way. Actually, what would have been my senior class would have been the largest in the school history. But really, Josh, my older brother, kind of put the school on the map back in 1993. One of the first I think he was the first USA Today Player of the Year in football and in baseball. So he drew a lot of attention to the school. We were throwing the ball, a couple hundred times a season, which was rare for that time and really ahead of its time. And in shotgun every play, which also was ahead of its time, where you see everybody doing that now. But all the college coaches and pro scouts and everything started coming through there to see my brother. And then we just kind of built on that ever since.
Now your brother, Josh Booty,
yes,
older, was throwing the football and playing baseball.
That's correct.
It was just real quick. He ended up going baseball first.
Yeah, he did. He was the 5th pick in the first round to the Florida Marlins, and in '94, we spent 5 years there. Won a World Series with the Marlins in '97, and then went back to college at LSU to play football, and then was drafted by the Seattle Seahawks, and then traded to the Browns later on, and played 3 years in the NFL as well as a quarterback.
All right. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Back to you.
Yeah, back to me.
All right. So now you're kind of in this older brother's shadow, but you're really not in his shadow because you broke some records yourself.
I did. The issue, Josh played 4 years where I only played 2. So, on a per season basis, I was ahead of where he was and would have broken his record, which also got broken a few years before even I was quarterbacked by another quarterback named Brock Berlin, who set all the national records. When Josh was there, he was really good. The team was not so good, but by the time Brock and myself, were the starters, we were, nationally known and in the top 5 every year. So we had really amazing teams and players around Brock and I. But again, on a per season basis, I put up better numbers, and had I stayed the 3rd year, might have really broken and set some national records. But being only limited to the 2, I had great stats, but really didn't break any of the records.
Okay, now I caught something that I got to double click on. If I had stayed for the 3rd year, if I had stayed for your senior year, because you didn't have a senior year.
I did not have a senior year.
This is a great story. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so I was, because my school was kindergarten through 12th, when I was in 7th, 8th grade, I started taking some high school courses. So, I was doing all that so that I could leave after the football season my senior year and enroll early and go to spring ball with whatever college I was going to, or at least that was the plan, if everything worked out. So as I got through my junior year, we won back-to-back state championships in 5A, the highest class there in Louisiana. And my dad was the coach. Was the head coach where he used to just be the quarterback coach. Some things had happened that kind of put him into that role. And a lot of the team and players had kind of, rallied around him now as the head coach. And him and the head of the school had some differences and saw things, in a different light. And they decided to kind of part ways after my junior year. And that's when I had come out the spring before that and committed to Coach Carroll that I was going to come to SC, thinking it was going to be the following year. And then once that happened, I kind of started thinking, well, I may leave early. I've got to take one course, over I think it was a 4 to 6 week period, and then I'm done with high school and I can enroll early, a whole full year early into college. A lot of the players kind of were upset about it, didn't want to see it happen. We were going into my senior year, #1 in the country, preseason. We were coming out to California to play De La Salle, who I forget how, hundreds of game winning streak at that time. So we had a really a lot of hype and anticipation going into that senior year. And so when all the players and myself kind of were really upset about the decision, they were, him and the head of the school, my dad and the head of the school were like, well, let's just finish this next season out and then we'll part ways after that. And so, I told Coach Carroll, that I'm going to end up staying at this, staying one more year in high school, and then I'll be there, as scheduled. And then about 2 weeks later, my dad called me again. I was at home. I don't know why. I was at the house on a school week or on a school day, but he said, hey, we're going to actually part ways now again for the second time. And so immediately I hung up with my dad, called Coach Carroll at SC and said, hey, I'd like to come, a year early. Is that even possible? And he said, let me call you right back, and hung up. And a few minutes later called me and said, you're not going to believe it, but we actually have one scholarship left for you to come. And I took the summer school class, and 6-8 weeks later I was at USC.
That's an amazing story. Yeah, just boy, Pete makes it happen, doesn't he? Coach Carroll.
Coach Carroll, what a man, what a coach, leader. Still to this day, there's so many things that he taught us that I implement, on a daily basis, and just the competitive nature and the attitude that he brings each and every day, the excitement. I was with the guy every day for 5 years for the most part, and I never saw him have an off day or a down day. If he had a headache or a stomach ache or the flu, you would have never known. And that's how he was every day, and it's genuine, and that's who he is. That's why he's had so much success, I think, in Seattle, in the NFL, the excitement, the energy, enthusiasm, and love for the game that he brings, and his love for the players. Also, I think that's just shown over the last, 20 years of his career, ever since he came to SC and kind of, changed his philosophy and style up. And, I think he's a Hall of Fame coach.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, sure. Okay, so you have a USC arrival, and you've got other players here that are – Carson just left?
Carson had just left, yes. They had just beat Iowa in the Orange Bowl and on his Heisman Trophy year.
Yes.
So he was on his way out to the NFL draft, and then that's when I was coming in.
You're coming in, and we got other names in there. Castle.
Matt Castle was in the quarterback room. Matt Leinart, Brandon Hance, Billy Hart. So there were some really good –
Some players.
Yeah, some really good players.
And you're 17.
Yeah, and I'm here now a year
You're a
earlier
junior.
than I thought.
Yeah. You're not even at it. Yeah, you're technically a young guy.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I know enough to know that Reggie's there also, and
Yep.
I know that he won a Heisman,
Mm-hmm.
and I know that Leinart won a Heisman.
Correct.
So you're obviously not playing your freshman year.
No, I did play some.
Did you?
Actually, yeah, I played. So me and Leinart were kind of competing, in that camp, and I ended up hurting my back about the second weekend, and so I had to miss several practices. And Leinart really took command and took over. He had already been there, 2 years, so he had a really good understanding of the offense. And here I came in, a few weeks before we even go into camp. So I was really behind, the 8 ball, I guess, to begin with. But still went out, had a great camp, came back after the back injury and finished strong. I actually played, I don't know, maybe in 3 or 4 games that year as the backup, and we were really good. So we got ahead, a lot. So I got some good quality reps that year. But given Matt and the season he had and that our team had, it was just kind of the writing was on the wall that it was going to be his team, moving forward for the next, year or 2.
He'd be a senior.
Well, no.
No, junior.
No, yeah. So I was there 3 years when he was the starter.
Okay.
And so he was like a redshirt sophomore that year, and then I was a true freshman. So I really felt it was best to give myself some separation from him in classification so that I would have more time to play. So I actually redshirted my second year and not my first year.
Oh, okay. All right. And then he, of course, moved on and was drafted, won the Heisman.
Yep.
And now you compete for the job.
Yep.
Right? Because the incumbent is gone. And I don't think he lost a lot of games.
No.
I think
2.
I think you can count them both.
Yeah.
Right? And so you do get the starting nod.
That's right.
And that's your junior year.
That's my junior year.
Okay.
Yes.
And you have a great year.
We had a great year.
A great year.
Yep.
And then you had a great senior year.
I had a great senior year.
Right.
My senior year, I missed a few games because I shattered my hand. So, statistically, I was having good or better than the year before. But due to missing the several games, that kind of hurt me a little bit.
Okay. And gosh, I could talk about football with you all day and all night long, but we got to move into what you get drafted by the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
You have a nice little run there.
Yep.
And your calling now is business.
Now it's business.
Okay. And so you're in Southern California, lots of contacts, and tell me about the business jobs you took after your NFL career.
Yeah, so after my NFL career, my first job into the real world was in the oil and gas industry. In Louisiana, I finished up playing in Houston. It was just an easy transition to go back home. I hadn't been home in a decade to see my mom and dad and really kind of make that my home base as I was still considering tryouts and trying to get picked up again. But I realized very kind of early on that was not going to happen. And a good friend of mine from high school had started an oil and gas service company, and really small, kind of mom and pop, and asked if I would come and help, raise some money, and from friends and family, just syndicate. It wasn't a large amount. I knew nothing about doing that, but I said, of course I'll help, right? I'm at the house working out and have most of the day to twiddle my thumbs. So went and joined up with his group and that service company. We raised about $2 million for that company, and then within 6-8 months, we had gone from 50 employees to like 400 employees. That's how fast the natural gas industry was booming in Louisiana, Texas, Arkansas, all at that time. So it really became kind of, we bit off more than we could chew. But it was a great experience, did that. I knew I always wanted to get into real estate, but that was back in 2010. So the market, was still recovering.
Just recovering.
Yeah, just recovering. So that's kind of when I went into the oil and gas, and it was booming there, in the South, like I just mentioned. So you would have never known really a recession was taking place at that time. But I was there for 2 years, and then in 2012, 2013, I started to really focus, on trying to get back out to Southern California and getting into the real estate game. I didn't know, whether that be a broker or a real estate agent or developer. I really hadn't got that far. But I came out, met with several, SC guys from my contacts, as you mentioned, and partnered up with one. It was a great fit, small organization that I could really get in there and learn and develop my real estate skills. And I, several weeks later after we agreed, I moved out and was with that group for almost 10 years.
Okay. This is a 10-year journey of doing what I would consider, based on what I know, a very large-scale development project.
It is. It didn't start out that way, and it wasn't our first deal, but we tied up some property up in Los Angeles near USC campus, across from the Coliseum. And we started with just kind of checkerboard pieces, a little 1.5 acre site, and ended up growing to over 8 acres. We did a large assemblage, almost 2 entire city blocks in Los Angeles. We entitled it for some student housing and retail and apartments. It took us over 10 years to get through, 9 years to get through the city and get our entitlements and approvals. We ran into opposition, we ran into COVID, everything you could imagine seems like was thrown at us, but we weathered the storm and actually just sold the entitled property to a large developer in February of 23.
Okay. So for those that, like myself, that don't know a lot about real estate, how this works, when you said you're around the Coliseum, so obviously there's USC, there's the Coliseum, you can walk, and then there's a whole, when I was at school there, before you, this whole area just is turning over.
It's turned over.
It's just turning over, right?
Dramatically. What used to be the old defunct sports arena is
Yes.
now, a $300 million MLS soccer stadium.
Right.
It's just state of the art and beautiful. Across the way, you've got over $1 billion George Lucas Museum that's almost completed.
Right.
You got the space shuttle exhibit that now is actually, they just finished it. So the shuttle's standing upright over at the Science Center. You've got the Olympics coming in 2028. So there was just a ton of private money that were thrown into Exposition Park directly across the street from us that, you could say we lucked out.
Okay. And so when you say you're acquiring, would you say 8 acres?
8 acres, yes.
So to keep the theme, that's 8 football fields.
It's 8 football
That's really
fields.
what it looks like.
Yep.
However you slice it, 43,000 square foot.
That's correct.
Whatever, but it's a football field.
Mm-hmm.
So you got 8 of them. And do you just ask people if they want to sell their property?
That's pretty much how we did it, and all the each transaction was structured differently depending on what the seller's objectives were and whatnot. So it took us a long time. I mean, it took us
I would imagine.
probably 3 years to really get all that together.
I'm thinking about where that is. That's just like dry cleaners and 7-Elevens. And
that's what it is. So
what it is,
there was
right?
a old shopping center just to the most southernmost portion along Martin Luther King, where there is a 7-Eleven, and it went all the way up to the 3800 block, which is right there, parallel to the Science Center,
Right.
With 39th Street, that cuts through both properties that we had on both sides of the block there between Figueroa and Flower.
Yeah, I can see it.
Yep.
Yeah, I see it 30 years ago when I
You've
went
been
there.
there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
when I went there. Right. Okay. So you guys are just hustling.
Yes.
And since I imagine you're raising money to do this.
Yeah, so
because you're buying property and not making any money on the property.
Not making any money on the property, or the little cash flow that it put off just went right back in to keep the deal afloat. That was my primary role with the company was raising our syndicated friends and family equity for the deal. I know I mentioned earlier, it started off small. I don't know that we would have taken on what it ended up being if we'd have known that at the very beginning, just because, we went from raising, $1.5 million, $2 million, $3 million to now we needed to raise, close to 40. So it was a big jump, but lucky for us, it kind of happened organically over time. And it went from just friends and family to, friends of friends of friends. It really grew. But that was great too. It increased our investor base and all the guys that we have access to that invest in real estate. So that was the good part of it. But again, had we known what it was in the beginning, I'm not sure we would have taken that on.
Just a lot of red tape, probably.
Yeah, a lot of red tape. Yeah. Like I said, we were sued twice in the process. It's just anybody that knows real estate at all knows how hard it is to get properties entitled in California, in Los Angeles, with lawsuits, with the pandemic. We were really fighting an uphill battle.
Right. Yeah. And during this time, you start to not feel yourself. Mm-hmm. So you've got, should I call it an illness of some sort?
Yep. That's correct.
And because you also had a back. You have football career.
Yeah, I started not feeling good back in 2013. So that's right before I moved back here, like weeks before I moved back here. Some stuff started happening that was uncharacteristic for me. I went ahead and moved out here, and I just kind of was managing, trying to figure out what was going on, starting to see as many doctors, specialists as I could. And that went for a couple years before the back injury, which I'll talk about. But the other illness that I was, dealing with, that really lasted for over 10 years, even, with the back injury happening in the middle of that. So it was kind of, and also finding out about my son, which we may talk about later too, in that same time frame. So it was between 13 and 15 were extremely difficult for me. 15 till, call it 24, still have been very challenging, and I'm really just now starting to kind of see some light at the end of the tunnel and starting to feel better. So I'm thrilled with the progress that we're making now. It just took me a lot longer than I would have liked to, get to the bottom of it and figure out what was actually causing my issues.
Okay. So let's go over this 10-year journey. You're not feeling yourself, and I would imagine yourself as a quarterback, an NFL player, I would imagine you've got quite a bounce in your step when you walk around.
I did, and I felt like I operated at a really high level.
For sure. The highest level.
Yeah, highest level, and sharp and quick, and then it was just in one day, it was like everything flipped upside down. And
an event.
In a specific day is when it all started. I was just going to work, a normal day. For me, I worked out in the morning, was headed into the office, and just started to feel terrible. The only way I can explain it is like it felt like my brain was kind of like melting, like it was on fire. And of course, I'd never felt that before in my life. I started to get really nauseous, didn't know what was happening, thought maybe I ate something bad, didn't know, got to the office, tried to push through. Couldn't really work based off the symptoms I was having. Probably about an hour or so later, I found myself in the emergency room, where I went in. They basically checked all my vitals, do what they do. You're fine, right? You're having an anxiety attack, and for me, I didn't even really know what anxiety was. I played in front of hundreds of thousands of people with all the noise, everything you could imagine. I'd never experienced, what anxiety felt like, or at least I didn't know. And I, kept telling him, no, I don't think that's it. I don't think that's it. Yeah, that's it. Go home. About 2 hours later, I was right back in the emergency room, just having, tremendous neurological, some psychological issues that were taking place, and I didn't know what was going on. Again, they, told me it was anxiety, gave me a shot, sent me home, and then that's kind of when, I started within a week or two seeing specialists and doctors, trying to, neurologists, neurosurgeons, everything you can imagine, trying to understand what's going on, because it was nothing I'd ever dealt with before in my entire life.
Wow. That is very scary.
Yeah, it was scary.
That is very scary for you, for your wife, you have a family, you have a job. So you're battling, and you're having doctors with little to no luck. And some days are better than others, but mojo's just down.
Yeah, mojo's way down. And there were, again, it was really kind of cyclical too. So some days I was okay, next day I'm not. I'd have 2 or 3 days that were okay in a row, still not anywhere near where I was operating before, but they were more manageable. I could go into the office, and then 2 days later, I'm laying face down on the floor in my room for 3 days. Just basically, just stuck, just couldn't even get off the ground hardly. So it was a really rough time, and I started seeing the psychiatrist, the psychologist, as I mentioned, the neurologist, everything, and really nobody could tell me what was wrong with me. You know, they just try to put me on, try this med, go take this supplement, try this med. And I did all those things because I trusted in the doctors and the system, but it ended up, everything that I was taking made me feel worse than I was without it at all. So it was a decade-long period of trying all sorts of medications, running all sorts of tests, and getting nowhere. So as you can imagine, that was pretty depressing in itself. You know, and then it affecting my job, my family, my own health, everything was being impacted. So it was just a trying time.
And then Nash gets diagnosed.
Yep.
Your son.
Yep. In 2016. So right after my back, I went in for a normal back surgery in 2015, which would have been the second one that I've had. So I was excited to get in there for surgery. I had so much success with my first one back at SC, and I was having a lot of same pain that I was having, and was just, let's get surgery. I want to get in there. The next day after surgery at SC, I was walking, feeling great. So I just assumed it'd be that way again. But it didn't turn out that way. So I went in for 2015, just a typical discectomy in the L5-S1 area. Went in, did that, was out the next day. Felt okay, but not quite as good as I did after my first one. A few days later, I'm like, man, something's just not right. I still feel, you know, down my leg, some nerve pain, sciatica. So a few days later, we go back in for a second one just to even try to clean it up a little more, which they did. And I came out feeling fine. And it was about 2 weeks after that, I remember I was down in San Diego with my family on vacation, and Jill goes, man, your back starting to look really infected around your incision site. And, you know, I started feeling around. It was hot, and, you know, could tell it was a little tender. So we go back and get it checked, and they're like, oh, you know, here, just take the antibiotic, everything will be okay. So we did that. It continued to get worse and worse and worse until I was, you know, here at Hoag in the ER with like 105 fever. And they rushed me back up to USC hospital. I ended up with septic staph, spinal meningitis, a spinal fluid leak. I spent probably a total of, you know, 2-3 months in the hospital. It was off and on a few times because they were just trying to, you know, figure it out. The doctors were a little puzzled. But by the end of it, they opened me up probably 4 or 5 times. But they couldn't get the infection out. It was behind the disc. And so they had to remove my disc to get all the infection out, and then I ended up with a fusion in my back. And then following that, I spent about 6 months with a PICC line, walking around with a fanny pack of antibiotics in and a walker, which wasn't very fun, and then oral antibiotics for about a year after that. But in 2016, you know, probably 6 months after my surgery, my son started complaining of leg pain, and he was two years old at that time, and we were puzzled, so didn't know what was going on. So then we started that process with him, seeing doctors, specialists. Luckily, you know, Chalk Hospital is right here, so great doctors and staff. But it took us probably a good 9 to 12 months to kind of get to a diagnosis for him, which they came back and said that he had muscular dystrophy, which I knew nothing about. Had heard it, but didn't know really what it was. And then turned out that my wife was actually a carrier of muscular dystrophy is how it happened, or how it was passed on to Nash. But he had RSV and pneumonia and all that a few months before he started complaining of leg pain, which can throw your immune system into whack, which can turn on a gene. So it started to express itself, which, you know, is getting scientific, but that's kind of the timeline of how things happen. But as you can imagine, as a father, as an athlete, you know, had all these dreams and envisioned my boy, you know, being an athlete and playing and being able to participate and coach him, kind of like my father did with me. And, you know, for a while there, it felt like it was stripped from me and taken from me, and I was mad and angry and upset, and also dealing with my back and my other health issues on top of that. So things were compounding on me pretty quickly, it felt like. And again, just felt like I was underwater for quite some time.
Yeah. And I know you're a faithful guy, but
Absolutely.
I'll tell you, this will challenge anyone, right? I mean, this is a God, where are you moment. I mean, we've all had them, but this is a severe story, JD.
It was, and that's where I was. And I had grown up, in the churches. I mentioned my dad was a pastor and in the faith. Just to be honest, I tried to do things my way, and it worked okay for a while, but in the end, it fails every time. And it was about 2018 that I kind of rededicated myself in my faith and gave my life back to Christ, and that's really when things started to shift for me. I wasn't getting better. My son wasn't getting better, but mentally and spiritually I was getting better, and starting to take those steps, and in the Word, and meditating on the Word, and memorizing Scripture, and had Scripture all over my bathroom, my car, you name it. I mean, I was all in, and again, it wasn't so I could be healed or my son could be healed. It's just I got to a breaking point where I couldn't do it on my own anymore. I needed the Creator to step in and do what He does. And just so blessed to have my dad as a resource, as a pastor, there leading me through that. He never forced it on me, kind of let us find our own path. But when I did, decide to rededicate my life, having, a pastor that I can call all hours of the day, but also as my father, who is so loving and just a phenomenal man, to have him there, along with what the Lord was doing in my life, completely saved my life. I really don't think I'd be sitting here today if it wasn't for 2018, me giving my life to Christ, and then having my dad there to help me walk through that.
Okay, we're gonna tee this up for the comeback.
Yes. Okay.
You meet a doctor.
I did.
Through prayer or resources, or
I did.
You found somebody.
I did. I'd been going to my general for almost 9 years at this point, and always complaining, telling about my issues. I'm not getting better. And I really wasn't expecting him to help me because, again, he's just my general doctor, not a specialist. But I went back in there, and I forget what the reason was. Maybe I just need to do a physical. And I told him I'm not getting better. I can't do this anymore. And he goes, well, let me make a call to one of my good friends, Dr. Daniel Amen, who's one of the, he's a world famous brain doctor. And I knew who he was just based off, all my research.
You've done a lot of research.
Yeah.
You're a doctor at this point.
Well, my wife more than even I am.
Yeah.
She's got the medical kind of background, but I do know more than I ever thought or hoped I would know. But he said, let me reach out to Dr. Daniel Amen. And I'm going, man, thank God. I'd love to go see him. It's hard to get into, and it's not covered by insurance, so it's not super cheap, which is why I had never kind of reached out and gone down that route. But also I was told by all the doctors kind of what they thought I had, so I just assumed that's what I have. So Dr. Amen agreed to see me. I went in, met with him, ran some tests, did some different things that I had never done before. And he kind of is unique in his approach of actually, looking at the brain, at the, part of the body he's trying to treat, where most, psychologists, psychiatrists, they just want to put you on meds. They don't even, look at the brain. Now, you can do an MRI with the neurologist and neurosurgeon, but that only tells you so much too. If you have swelling or you're, blood clot, things like that. But really, outside of that, it doesn't give you, many more answers than that. So I finished, all my testing and was waiting for results, and he reached back out to me and said, JD, I think based off your testing and imaging that you have some sort of an infection. And immediately I was like, bam, that's it. That's exactly what I've been telling doctors all these years. I told them I felt like my brain was infected, like it was poisoned, and it wasn't just anxiety.
From the first day.
From the very first day.
You said your head was on fire.
For the very first day, it was on fire, which is another indication of what Dr. Amen was about to reveal to me. So once I had that report, he ordered some additional lab testing, which came back and showed that I was highly toxic with mold, which just blew me away. That it was something that is treatable. Once I learned more about it, it's treatable. All the indications and symptoms and things that I had totally matched up with and a lot do. There's a lot that match up symptom-wise, which is why it can be so difficult for doctors to diagnose. But once I, realized that I was toxic with that, I started to research it and understand it and see and listen to other people that had dealt with it. They were experiencing similar type things to me. It's really, it was hope. That there is a path forward to me feeling better.
And a diagnosis.
Yeah. Which
it isn't anxiety.
No.
It's
not. Well, it is, but
right.
It's brought on.
Well, it's brought on.
It's brought on by what it's doing to your system.
Right.
Your limbic system and your nervous system. Everything was just wreaking complete havoc on my entire body. Which is what was causing all the issues. It wasn't, me or a situation or something that occurred in my life that brought it on. It was an actual infection and a toxicity to mold that really was causing all of these issues. So for me, that was huge, a huge breakthrough for me, my wife, because I think she'd gotten to the point too, like, hey, it's been 10 years, you've done all you can do. Let's just go home and try to live life. And to me, that was, she was just burned out just like I was. She hated it for me, wanted to see me well. So when we got this diagnosis, both of us, we cried. It was something that we were so emotional about, but it's because we were so hopeful and excited at this point now that it wasn't, me going crazy.
Mm-hmm. All right. JD, how does mold get on one's brain?
Well, in my situation, I think it's very, very different compared to most. A lot of people are exposed to it through, their environment, whether it's their apartment or their home or their office building, can really bring that on and cause tremendous havoc within someone's body like it did to mine. Usually, though, people kind of catch it sooner on the mold side because, number one, they either can see the mold wherever they're living, but also when they remove themselves from their apartment or the house or office, they feel better, and they go back and feel worse, and then so they're like, something's going on here. But for me, it was no matter where I was. It could come on at any moment, whether I was at church, home, office, the beach, it didn't matter. So once I realized that I had the mold, we still didn't really immediately go down the path of trying to understand where I got the mold or how I had it. We just knew that I had it, and we of course went home, did a test of the house. That came back, no mold at all. Did I get it in college in a dorm or apartment or who knows, right? And it was probably about 6 months into realizing I had the mold that we had, been trying treatments, different ones still, and I really wasn't getting any better. And I'm going, well, I'm 6 months, into this. I know they say it can take a year or two, but I want to see incremental progress here, and I wasn't seeing that. And Dr. Amen, and thank God for him and finding it, but he's not technically a mold specialist. He's a brain specialist. So I started seeing some other specialists in that area as well, as long as one on his team. But I went and met with one particular, and he's like, have you ever looked into I had metal in my mouth for some dental work I had done back in high school that I had never taken out that I should have, many, many years ago. And he's like, well, maybe the metal is, messing you up and causing your body still not to take these, new supplements and protocol that's helping you get better. And I didn't think much of it, but I said, heck, I'm supposed to get these out a decade ago, more than that. So let's just go get it removed, and maybe I get better, maybe I don't. I have nothing to lose. And so I went to a dentist to take the spacers out that I had. And as he's taking it off, he asked me, have you ever tested positive for mold? And I said, yes, I have recently. Why would you ask that? And he goes, well, I don't know how to tell you this, but your teeth are covered in mold. And I was in shock. I couldn't, made him take a picture. I wanted to see it. And sure enough, I had 4 teeth that were completely covered in mold that were constantly right into my bloodstream, into my brain, every day, all day, no matter where I went. It was constantly, being fed into my body.
Caught in the metal.
Caught in the metal.
From the braces, was it?
Yeah,
braces?
from the spacers that I got after I had braces as a young kid. And you couldn't see it. The dentist, nobody could see it until it was removed. My gum had kind of grown over the bottom of them by now, which is kind of gross, I guess. But it was all underneath there, and nobody could see it. And it was really just, I think it, with Dr. Amen and going to the dentist and the other specialist, it was really, I think, it was a God thing, mm-hmm. and it was the right time to start revealing all of these things to me and helping me. And from that moment on, the supplements and the protocols and everything, I started to see, slowly but surely progress. And now not only did we get a diagnosis of what I had, we actually found the source, which is unbelievable. And it's just been a slow and steady progress, ever since. I'm still not where I want to be, but I am so much better than I was. I'm grateful to God. So happy with where things are going. I still have days that aren't great, but the consistency and I'm having weeks, back to back, a month that's good. It's just, I'm so excited.
You're regenerating.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And like this conversation here, you're not tired.
No, I'm not at all. And that was, fatigue was one of the...
Well, this is a tough conversation too.
Biggest symptom that I had was fatigue. And, now I'm working out again. I'm active. I'm, running, which I hadn't done in years.
Mm-hmm.
So to be doing those things again that I love and enjoy, and I can sit on the couch and watch a movie with my kids at night, without complete overload, in my brain, and the way I was feeling is just, I feel like I'm getting my life back. So I'm so looking forward to what the years ahead have, and kind of taking back everything that was taken from me. Mm-hmm. And I'm so looking forward to it.
Wow, JD, what a story. God is good.
He is.
Yeah, he is. And
absolutely.
The amount of effort that you must have put in during the times that you were sick. Anyone who's ever been sick knows you don't feel like doing much.
No.
And you not only went to work every day,
yep.
But performed, mm-hmm. and had a successful ending with your real estate deal, all while you basically feel like you get the flu the whole day.
Yeah.
Plus
Yeah.
So that's just shows me a lot of who you are. And then you, on your knees, you pray, and boom, that's
where it is.
We've got.
It was on my knees.
Well, it was on your knees where you really got strong.
That's right.
Yeah.
No doubt. Yep.
Yeah.
It's, I learned a lot, and I'm better for even going through it. As hard as it was, there are many, many dark nights, put it that way. But to come out and be in the light is something that is so special to me and my family. And again, so grateful to God and my dad and my wife, everybody, standing by me and helping me through those dark times. But just, never giving up, pushing through, always knowing tomorrow can be better. And that usually was not the case, but, that belief and that faith and quoting those scriptures and doing those things that were so instrumental, again, to me being here today.
All right, brother. Well, I'm gonna keep my eye on you and your family, and I know you're going to be coaching fourth graders here.
Yep. My son that actually was diagnosed with the muscular dystrophy, he's the fourth grader. He's doing amazing, which is also another work of God that he's doing what he's doing. He's playing football, with muscular dystrophy and thriving. So we're so pleased, and again, so hopeful for him and his future, along with, mine and my family. So we're just so happy to be out coaching. And I've also got a 5-year-old boy who I'll be coaching him, I'm sure, as well in the next few years. And then a 13-year-old daughter who's, a tremendous athlete and really into competitive cheer, and she's full force right now. But we're busy, but loving every second of it.
An amazing wife and an amazing family.
That's right.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for coming in,
Thank
JD.
you.
It's
Thank you,
a
Jason.
terrific story, and just starting.
I really appreciate you, and thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Yeah. See you again.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.